Are you exhausted from Zooming all day? Are you feeling disconnected from your team? Are you feeling like maybe you're not Zooming correctly? Well, stay tuned. We have tips for you.
Hey there, it's Shannon.
And Micah.
We're the coaches and co-founders of Shinebright Coaching, and we built this channel to share insights, resources, tools, and everything we've learned from coaching thousands of people to successful career transitions, up-leveling in their career, and finding more fulfillment on their path.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about Zooming. And obviously during the pandemic, when we were all at home, we were all spending a lot of time on Zoom or Google Chats or whatever mechanism your company uses. And now we're kind of hybrid. Some are back in the office. Some of us are still at home, work from home full time. But some of us are still feeling really exhausted after a day of meetings. We no longer have some of the interactions we have between meetings in an office, right? So we decided it would be helpful to share with you some tips of how to combat Zoom fatigue, set yourself up for success, and also find the best ways to show up to a meeting when you have a lot in one day.
Yeah. I think this is the new way of working. As Micah said, companies are slowly asking people to come back, but it doesn't look like people will be back in offices full time, or at least not everyone. And so learning how to stay connected to your team, to manage energy levels, to show up and still feel as though you are present, engaged, and, productive over Zoom is going to be a skill that we all need.
Yeah. And there are a lot of different angles that we can kind of look at this from and try to strategize best practices. So that's what we wanted to do today. The first one that we were thinking about that we've experienced great success in is thinking about how you're scheduling your meetings. So
Huge.
Shannon and I both had offices prior to the pandemic where we would meet clients sometimes in person and then also sometimes on Zoom, depending on what the client's needs were or where they were in the country. And now that we actually see all of our clients online or on Zoom, we started finding a trend. Do you remember this? All of a sudden we realized we were seeing more clients daily.
Yes.
And that's because it was easier to do. When we had our offices, we would, walk to the front of the office building, meet the client, walk them in, have a little chit chat, all these different things that took time between meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, when we were shifting to this full-time Zooming, we realized that we were just stacking them. 5 minutes between clients, 10 minutes between clients. Oh, now I can see 3 more in a day. And that has a very different effect on humans than seeing maybe 5 people in person or 10 people in person. So we started having conversations about how do we create space that actually allows us to refuel between meetings with ourselves, with each other, or with clients.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really huge. And I think that the efficiency of, a Zoom meeting, right? Just being able to hit start and hit end at the end of an hour or 90 minutes, has led to kind of a trend where people are just in back to back Zoom meetings, and people are scheduling things on your calendar or you're doing it yourself. And I think, there is this idea, well, I'm at home and, whatnot. It shouldn't be that bad. And I think the exhaustion, right, and the depletion of energy after, 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe a full day of Zoom meetings is something that we're hearing over and over again. So first tip is mindful of scheduling, right? And there's a few things to be kind of aware of. I think one is, are you scheduling breaks in between your meetings, right? Are you letting people do a back to back to back, or are you asking that there's a 15-minute window so you can get up, so you can move, so you can get a drink of water, whatnot. I think that's a huge way of being able to, move some energy, right? Get away from the screen for at least a few minutes, which studies show allows you to kind of, get your energy back up and you're refocused for that next meeting. I think one other thing to be thinking about is the length of your meeting. So, sitting in front of a computer, like Micah said, is way different than sitting in front of a human, right? When a human is in front of us, we're exchanging energy. And oftentimes, hopefully if it's a good interaction or an interesting, topic, we're getting energy and engagement from that interaction and being in close contact with an actual human that we sometimes don't get over Zoom, or often it can be harder to get that same energy, and often it's more of a depletion. So being mindful of how long are those meetings, right? Maybe our attention span is at its best at 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And if you know that, and if you're starting to see that, after a half hour, you're zoning out, you're just, having a hard time focusing, or your energy is just waning, schedule shorter meetings and make sure you have some windows or buffers in between those meetings.
Yeah, those are great tips. Those two are the first way to attack this. There's one other thing that I want to add about the meetings. So in addition to figuring out what the sweet spot is for your team and the length of the meetings, I think it's really important to consider, is the meeting necessary? Mm-hmm. This is a hot topic in many organizations, but I think that we really went to one extreme during the pandemic. We were all also looking for community and wanting to connect with people during that dead lockdown time. And so all types of meetings started being scheduled, I think for that reason, or out of that deficit of connection. And now we're back, we're juggling, even more things than we were juggling prior to the pandemic. And we're still having a lot of meetings that maybe don't need to happen in the capacity or as regularly as they are. Sorry about that. But so sometimes we're having this weekly debriefing at the end, and people don't need that anymore because you've been slacking about it all week. Yeah. So that's another thing to consider. Is this regular meeting necessary?
Yeah. So good, right? Sometimes it's like, I could have just emailed you, or that could have been a Slack.
Yep.
I think the other thing that we're hearing a ton of is, especially for those extroverts out there, or even those introverts that really like your team or really enjoyed the connection of, those water cooler chats, are really feeling disconnected. And I think we had a huge realization about work during the pandemic, which was that a big piece of, where we get engagement and enjoyment and satisfaction is the people that we're spending our days with. And when we're not seeing them in person, oftentimes we're left wanting for connection, and it's leaving, our days feeling less satisfied and less fulfilled. And so how do you build actual connection if you're only seeing your team over Zoom is, I think, a huge question, and something that will continue to be, iterated on and innovated by. But I think, one of my biggest suggestions is to kind of name it, right? To name it and put it out there like, hey, we're not actually getting a chance to really see how each other's doing. Can we start with a check-in? Right? Or check out, or both, right? A time where everyone's just kind of saying like, hey, how's your weekend? Tell me one fun thing you did over the weekend. Or, how are you actually doing? Right? Or, if it's easy to do just a one-word check-in, right? Just one adjective of maybe how you're feeling or your temperature that day, just allows us to remember that we're all humans here, right? And maybe gives us a sense of, oh, so-and-so's been really quiet lately, and they just checked in, and now I have a better sense of why, and I feel more connected. Or maybe I'm gonna offline, give that person a call and see if they want to talk further. So how can you create space and pockets of intentional time to do some of that chit chat, some of that personal connection that just happened naturally when you were in the office full time, can help with that disconnection piece.
I want to highlight something you just said. picking up the phone and calling someone. So this is something that I hear about often from clients, that they miss that. They miss talking to people. And so if they are working remote, you're just getting inundated, right? And you do forget there is a human. And even seeing them face to face on Zoom sometimes doesn't allow you to remember how human that person is. So maybe scheduling a meeting where you're talking and you're not looking at each other on a camera can be really helpful. I also recommend, if you are in the same city and your teammates live near you, you don't have to do it all the time, but get off the Zoom and go and have a walking meeting if there's, a path near you or you live near the beach or something like that, and just schedule that once a month. Even that one time, that one day or that one meeting that you have, with your tennis shoes on, walking around the neighborhood, that revitalizes us in a way that lasts a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's even true for us, right? So Micah and I don't live in the same city. We're not too far apart, but during the pandemic and even, if we're out of it, who knows, even afterwards, we rarely see each other. And so, I think even just the times when we're intentional about getting together or connecting is so healthy for our business, right? It reignites our connection and our friendship, and that just feeds the work that we do and helps us to show up better. So even we need to be intentional about making that happen, and we know the benefit of, taking a little extra time to do that.
Two more little tips, more tactical and strategic. So during the pandemic, there was a professor at Stanford, I forget his name, but he did a lot of research on Zoom fatigue. And two of his biggest tips in helping to help your brain out, because when we're looking at a Zoom with 20 people on it, his research really showed that our brain gets overloaded. So even when you're in a meeting and there's 20 people around a table, you're not looking at them all at once. And so that really exhausts your ability to kind of see what everyone's doing. So one thing that he said immediately, turn your camera off. So you're still being filmed, you're still showing up to your coworkers, but you're not seeing yourself looking back at you, because that's distracting, disorienting, and apparently exhausting to our brain. So that's one less thing to do. And the other thing is to make sure that you have like the landscape view, or whichever view is most comfortable to you on Zoom, where you probably don't have everyone looking at you at the same time. So there's a couple different options where you can choose what kind of is less overwhelming to your system.
Yeah, I think maybe you're talking about the speaker view.
Thank you.
Right. So the speaker view just gives you one person who's talking, rather than the gallery view gives you, maybe 5 to 20 little boxes with everyone and their, eye movements and, whatever they're doing. That makes a lot of sense, right? Why that's a lot of sensory information for our brain to be taking in, and may make it hard to focus and also just exhausting.
Yep.
I would say to, just to kind of wrap this up, what can you be doing as well? Close the tabs, right? This whole, idea that we can be multitasking, we're checking email, we're looking at a document that we're working on, we're, slacking or, looking at messages while also trying to be in the meeting. That is a guaranteed way of exhausting yourself and your brain, and also just diminishing your ability to be effective at whatever you're doing. Multitasking is actually not true.
It's a myth.
It's a myth. You cannot do more than one thing at once, right? Your brain is actually literally just switching gears, and in that switching of gears, it diminishes in its ability to be effective at whatever it's switching gears between.
It dilutes the effort that you're trying so hard to put out.
And I think, there's so much research about mindfulness and presence. And when we are fully engaged in whatever we're doing, whether that's fully engaged in a meeting, active listening while we're in that meeting, or if we're off the meeting and we're fully engaged in the task at hand, this is actually where we give ourselves the ability to get energized, right, by the task that we're doing, versus trying to do 20 things at once. We're depleting and diminishing our energy and our effectiveness. So close all the tabs, put away your phone, really be present, active listening, another good tip to stay a little more energized in back-to-back Zooms.
Yep, and hopefully they aren't back-to-back. Hopefully you are strategizing the best way to maintain your day, right?
All right.
So thank you for joining us. We hope that some of these tips help, and please leave any comments for us. Yep, with a like, and subscribe to our channel if you find this information helpful. We're always looking to connect with folks, so thanks for being here.
All right. Take care.
Take care.